Hey guys, my name is Shelby. Welcome back to my channel, Grace with Books. Today I'm going to be giving you my March wrap-up and my April TBR. Of course, now is when they decide they need to mow the lawn outside my apartment. That is perfect timing. But we are going to do our best to ignore that and talk about all the books that I read in March. I actually had a pretty good reading month. I read 8 books total. 5 of those were physical books and 3 were ebooks, and in total I read 3,301 pages, which is very exciting. Part of my success this month with reading is definitely due to the fact that I was hosting a readathon this month with Allie over at Dreamer with a Book, so thank you to everyone who participated in the Forever Romance readathon with us. I am super happy with the amount of romance I read, and I can't wait to share my whole wrap-up with you guys. So going chronologically, the first book that I read in March was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is the first time that I've ever read the book all the way through, and it's also the first time that I actually wrote in a book for a non-school related book. Usually professors and teachers ask that you make annotations in your books and stuff like that, and I've never done that with one of the books that I personally was reading and have in my collection, but I did in this one. I underlined my favorite lines, I wrote little notes, and it was actually really fun. I really enjoyed kind of making my mark on the story, and I kind of like the idea that every time I reread this now, I'll be able to add to those notes, so that was really cool. This book I gave 5 stars, and it's really just a story about family and love and growing up. This book definitely hit me really hard coming from a family of all girls. So watching the sisters interact with each other, watching them tease each other and then grow up and seeing how their relationships change over time just really hit home for me because it made me think of me and my sisters. I really just connected with Meg's kindness and Joe's ambition, Beth's sincerity, and Amy's curiosity. I feel like we can all see a little bit of ourselves in these little women. Reading this also reaffirmed the love that I have for Lori and Amy. I know that's pretty controversial. You either love Lori and Amy or you wish Lori and Joe were together and hate Amy. So I know it's a bit of a hot topic, but I actually really loved Amy and Lori in this story because I don't feel like she stole him from Joe at all. I don't feel that way, and I know some people do, but when Amy and Lori reunite in their adulthood, Lori's kind of broken. Lori's kind of unsure what he wants to do with his life, and he's unsure of his direction now that his plans have failed back in America. So Amy is really there to pick him up, and she kind of gives him a reason to go on living, and I think it was just really powerful. So I adored this book, definitely 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to maybe make this an annual thing, an annual reread that I do in the spring. The next book that I read in March was Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman. I adore the Heartstopper graphic novel series. It is just one of my favorite romances ever. I think Alice Oseman captures that high school romance drama very well, and I think she really can see into the minds of these characters, and she writes them so relatably, and you just cannot help but fall in love with Nick and Charlie's romance. So as I said, this book follows Nick and Charlie, as all of the books in this graphic novel series do. And now that they're kind of established in their relationship, this book goes a little bit deeper into their own kind of separate problems. So in this book, Nick notices that Charlie is having trouble eating. He's having a really strange and kind of unhealthy relationship with food. So this book is all about how do you help a loved one who might be going through an eating disorder and what that conversation looks like, and how do you support someone who is just going through a depression. And I think it was just so powerful. It made me cry watching those scenes, the conversations between the two of them. And I think that Alice Oseman tackled this topic in a really sincere and wonderful way that made it less of a taboo and less of using it as a plot device and more like a real conversation. So I really like that aspect of the book. It's so amazing how deep you can get in a few pages. And if you haven't picked up the Heartstopper series yet, I highly recommend you do so before it gets on Netflix, because it is coming to Netflix as a live action show and I'm so excited. And I'm just really excited to see my characters in real life on the screen, so definitely pick it up before then. And I'm a little biased because one of the main characters, Charlie, has the same birthday as me, so definitely check it out. We're birthday twins, Taurus. But yeah, that's not a reason why you should read it, but I like that fact. But yeah, please read Heartstopper, 5 out of 5. So next up we have Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is kind of a short and sweet romance about two polar opposites kind of becoming friends and then maybe becoming more. In this book we follow Josh and Hazel, who had known each other since college but had only recently reconnected in adulthood, and they kind of like rekindled this friendship that they have, and it is such a cute friendship because Josh is very reserved, he's very logical and go by the book, and Hazel is, in short, eccentric. Like, I feel like that's not a good enough word to describe her, but she is crazy and she doesn't care what other people think of her. She wears outrageous outfits and does outrageous things because she wants to, and she doesn't really let other people's opinion of her impact that. And this is kind of about both of them cheering each other on, but they decide that they would not work as a couple. So instead, they have been setting each other up on a series of blind double dates. And this book kind of chronicles that adventure of both of them setting each other up on these bad dates just to honestly spend more time together. So it's just such a fun and cute book. I definitely felt like it started off very slow. I was worried it was going to be a DNF at first just because I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere with the book, but stick with it if you're having that problem, because I promise it gets better. It gets more upbeat, it gets more fast-paced, and you will just absolutely adore their relationship and that kind of journey. So Christina Lauren, you've done it again. I need to read more of your books. I've only read like 3 or 4 by them, so I'm really happy to add this to the collection of Christina Lauren books that I like. The next book that I picked up in March is actually a reread, and it is a reread of a whole series that I am doing with my friend Zoe over at Zoe Zimmerman on YouTube. She also has a clothing boutique called The Magic Burrow, so be sure to check that out. And we have been rereading the ACOTAR series because when we finished Sarah J Maas's most recent book, we decided that we needed to go back and read all of it. So I started with A Court of Thorns and Roses, obviously, and I actually wrote in this book too, which is really exciting. I have the old covers and I know they're worth a lot probably at this point because I don't think they're making them anymore, but I kind of like that I have the old covers and writing in them just makes them feel more like mine. So I had a lot of fun just rereading this book. Honestly, this is the first time I have reread this book since I initially read it many years ago, and it's so interesting after reading the whole series and reading all of Sarah J Maas's books how smart of a writer Sarah J Maas is. She left hints in this book of things that don't come up again to like the 3rd or 4th book in this series. The little like hints and the droppings of like foreshadowing. Sorry, the mower is right there. It's just so cool, and I am just in awe of her writing style. She's just such a good author. I'm so obsessed with her after reading this, and this one was definitely the hardest, I think, to reread for purposes you understand if you've read this series before. It's really difficult to kind of go back to the beginning, but it's just, it was actually kind of also nice to start at the roots to see Feyre, our main character, grow again, because she is such a badass character, and it's hard to remember that she didn't start out that way, and kind of seeing her find herself in this book and over the next 2 books is going to be really fun. On to my first ebook of the month. This was a highly anticipated book for me, War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I gave this book 3 stars. This was probably my least favorite book in the From Blood and Ash series. I liked parts of it, and I don't want to give things away because a lot of this book spoils for the previous book, but I will say that it had some tropes that I didn't necessarily love, and a lot of the book felt repetitive of previous storylines. So it was very have a quest, go on the quest, complete the quest, something bad happens. And I feel like that formula has just been very overdone in this book series, that it was kind of expected. And I also felt like the book ended in a very strange spot. I feel like it kind of just left off. And I know that it's meant to create hype for the next book in the series, but I feel like we needed a more clear ending point. And for the previous 3 books, we got that. We got that kind of kicker at the end. But in this one, we didn't. And it was kind of weird how it left off. I felt like it was unfinished almost. So definitely not my favorite. I did give it 3 stars because the second half of the book I liked a lot more than the first half of the book. And I do like the writing and the characters, and I love seeing our main character Poppy grow into the person she is supposed to be. So I liked it for those reasons, but definitely my least favorite book of the series. I will be curious to see about the 5th book. I'm still gonna read it, but I'm wondering if it's gonna go downhill from here, since we kind of have a lot of the big reveals happened already. So I'm curious to see like how the book is gonna recapture our interests moving forward. So yeah, I could use a little break from these characters right now. So disappointing, but it was okay. All right, so the last 3 books that I read in March were all from the same series, because I read this for the readathon, and a lot of people had been telling me to read this book, and I finally picked it up, and oh my god, did I love it. This book, this romance was beautiful. I have a new favorite author, I have a new favorite couple, so I'm just gonna tell you what it is. The Simple Wilds by K.A. Tucker. I adored this book. We follow Calla, who lives in Toronto with her mother. She hasn't spoken to her father in 24 years. Her mother left her father, who lives in Alaska, because she didn't like the rural lifestyle. She didn't like being so disconnected from reality. So she took her daughter and they went to Toronto, and they never heard or saw from the dad again. But out of the blue one day, Calla gets a phone call saying, your father has been diagnosed with cancer. Can you come visit and get to know your father before it's too late? And Calla wrestles with this decision, but ultimately decides to go meet her father for the first time since she was 2 years old. While visiting her father, she meets this very grumpy Alaskan pilot named Jonah, and Jonah cares very deeply for her father. They're friends, and he doesn't really like the idea of this spoiled big city girl coming into their rural Alaskan lifestyle and changing things. So this is about reconnection, it's about finding love, it's a grumpy sunshine romance trope, and I just adored every single second of it. And I loved how it was a romance and we had that kind of like fun flirty side, but you also had these really deep moments of Calla getting to know her father and asking some really hard questions, like, why did you never come for me? Like, why did you stop calling? So it was really wonderful. There were so many wonderful layers to this book. It was beautifully written. I gave it 5 stars. As I said, I read this whole series. So the second book is called Wild at Heart, and it kind of takes place a few months after the events of The Simple Wild and just details more of Jonah and Calla's relationship. And I really like how this book, like the last book, there was the drama with the father and them kind of getting to know each other and having this kind of new love stage, but this second book is about settling into a relationship and what is healthy communication and how do you function as a couple in a new setting. So I really like that this book kind of tackled those questions. I gave this book 4 stars. And the third and final book that I read from this series, and the last book I read in March, was Forever Wild, which is a novella taking place after the second book in the series, and it's kind of the end of Calla and Jonah's story, which was just so cute. I absolutely adored it. And I know that there is technically a 4th book in the series that follows a different character, and I haven't decided if I'm gonna read that one yet, but I think I'm leaning towards yes, just because I love the setting, I love the characters, and I kind of want to just see more of the worlds that K.A. Tucker has created. That novella was a 5-star read for me. And those were all the books that I read in March. As I said, I had a really good reading month, not just because of the quantity of books I read, but also because of the quality of books. The majority of the books I read this month I really enjoyed, and I don't know, I always feel really happy and full of serotonin when I finish a month reading books that I loved, as opposed to reading like a bunch of books that I didn't love. So I'm feeling really good going into April. And speaking of April, it is time to talk about my April TBR. So as you guys may or may not know, April is my birthday month. I was born on April 27th, and this year I will be turning 22, which is strange, and it feels weird to be like firmly in my 20s. Like, that just sounds weird to say. So I'm really focused on reading books that I know I'm going to enjoy this month. I want to read books that make me happy. So I have 3 books on my set TBR. Obviously, these will probably change. I'll probably read more books than the 3 I'm going to mention here, but I thought I would share them with you nonetheless. Just the 3 books that I definitely want to get to this month, and you know, just books that I'm going to be happy and want to celebrate my birthday with. So one of the first books I want to read in April is A Court of Mist and Fury, because that is the next book in the ACOTAR series that I'm rereading, and I'm really excited to get to this one. It's definitely my favorite of the ACOTAR series. I adore this book. I think there's so much great content in it, and I have my little highlighter because I will be highlighting and annotating this book physically, and I'm really excited to get to this one. It's a long one, so it's probably going to take me a while just because I'm also annotating and highlighting, and that makes me kind of slow down my reading, which I don't hate. I like that I'm going to take my time with this one, and I'm just really excited that I get to read one of my favorite books during my birthday month. Another book I want to read this month is The King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. I love fantasy, and I love fantasy romance so much, so I definitely wanted to pick this one up this next month because I didn't get a chance to in March. And this tells the story about a bloody king and the princess who was promised to him to marry, but she has her own secret agenda, and she is actually going to gain his trust and kill him. I love that trope. I love books with that trope so much because I think it creates such interesting power dynamics and character development throughout the book as they kind of spend time with each other and learn about each other. So I'm really excited to see that trope play out in this one. I've heard really good things, so definitely excited to read King of Battle and Blood. And finally, the third book that I definitely want to get to in the month of April is actually one that was sent to me by the publisher and the author, and that is a middle grade called The Ogres and the Orphans by Kelly Barnhill. I love Kelly Barnhill. She wrote The Girl Who Drank the Moon, and that is one of my favorite middle grades of all time. So when her publicist reached out to me saying, hey, we noticed you really liked this book, would you like to receive her next one? I was like, hell yes, I do. So this just looks really adorable. It's about this ogress who takes care of all these orphans, and the town doesn't approve of her, and they're actually actively trying to kick her out. And it's about family and found family and what these kids will do to protect the woman who essentially raised them. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading this one in the month of April. I think it's just gonna be really sweet, and I can't wait to get to it. So that was my March wrap up and my April TBR. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please down below leave me what books that you read in March that you loved, as well as what you're planning to read in April. If you guys liked this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Hit the notification bell to get updates on when I post. I post every single week, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!